Hi, my name is Alice Santa, and today I am going to talk a little bit about the attunement steps and what they are, and hopefully you guys can use them at home with your kids and other adults too. This is something that teachers at Starfish and staff were trained on. It was part of a curriculum, and they utilize this in the classroom all the time with the kids, and it's really helpful, and we'd like to share that with you. So the attunement steps is 4 steps. They are notice, name, validate, and respond. And I am going to go through each one of the steps with an example, and hopefully you guys can utilize it and it'll make sense to you. So attunement, the definition of it is the ability to read another person's cues, such as their facial expression, their voice tone, the volume of their voice, their body language, and then you validate the emotion or the need before we respond to the behavior. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So the first step is notice. So in this step, we're noticing in a situation what's going on, what's happening, how, say it's between 2 kids or a child, you're noticing what's going on with them. And also I feel like one of a more important step is noticing what's going on within yourself. So if the situation is frustrating to you, it's the 4th argument that your kids are having within the first hour of you waking up, kind of noticing how it's making you feel and being able to try to help yourself, whether it's taking a few deep breaths, doing a little bit of self-care. Deep breaths are really helpful, and so taking a few deep breaths or even just walking away for a minute, as long as everything is safe, and just collecting yourself before you move on to the next steps. So say we'll do an example. Say the 2 kids are, I'll use my son's name, David. We'll say David and Johnny. So David and Johnny are playing, and David wants a toy that Johnny has, and so David's becoming upset. So I'm noticing the situation that David's becoming upset, that they're both fighting over a toy that they want. So that's the first step, and I'm noticing within myself that I'm a little frustrated, so I'm going to take a few deep breaths before I move on to the next step. And notice is a silent step, so you're not saying anything in that step. It's really just kind of observing what's going on as well as what's going on within yourself. So the next step is name. And so you're going to name what you're seeing. So it seems like, David, you want the toy that Johnny has right now. So they're saying that. Or, David, I'm wondering if you wanted to share the toy with Johnny. So just naming what we're seeing. The next step is validate, which I feel like this is one of the most important steps. And you're validating the emotion that the child or adult or person is having. And you're validating the emotion and the need. And sometimes this is a hard step for a lot of people, because say there's a behavior associated with it. Say David hit Johnny, but David's crying. And I hear a lot of feedback of like, I don't want to validate that it's okay to hit. You know, we want to keep our body safe and our hands safe. So I understand that. But we want, say David hit Johnny. We want to validate, David, you seem really upset right now that you want that toy. But you got to remember, we have to keep our hands safe and our body safe. And so being able to validate that, like, it can be frustrating that you want that toy, or that Johnny's not sharing the toy with you, or it seems like you're really upset, or I noticed that you're crying. So you're validating those feelings, but also kind of like stating that expectation of, if it was an unsafe behavior, that this is not a safe behavior, and that in respond, you can say like what's appropriate or what we would hope that they could do. So, So in this situation, like I said, David wants the toy that Johnny has. So I'm noticing that. I'm taking a few deep breaths to kind of calm and collect myself before I move on. And so I'm naming it like, David, it seems that you really want to play with the same toy that Johnny's playing with. And it seems that Johnny doesn't want to give it up right now. David, I noticed that you're crying, and it seems like you're really upset right now. And it makes sense that you're upset, that you want to play with a toy, but we can't hit our friends. We got to keep our hands safe and our body safe. And then the last one is respond. And so in this step, if you have older kids, you can ask them, how can I help you? And see if they're able to give you a response that they think would help them out, or what do you need? So if you say like, what do you need? And like David says, I need to play with that toy. And sometimes when they're younger, it's harder for them to have a response. So as caregivers or adults that are in the situation, we want to be able to give them the choices. So if I ask him like, what do you need? He's like, I just need a hug right now. And sometimes they need those like soothing touches. I'll give them a hug, and then I'll maybe say, like a solution. So David, I see that you said you wanted a hug, and I gave him a hug, and I was like, how about Johnny plays with it for 5 minutes and mommy can set a timer, and then once that timer goes up, you get a turn. So being able to age appropriately give them choices and responses. And then you can also, in that step, about like, we just want to make sure that we keep our body safe if there was like an unsafe behavior that the child did. So I hope that this was helpful. I know sometimes it can be hard to go through each one of these steps. So just being able to kind of really notice what's happening within yourself, name what you're noticing, and then validating, I think, is huge. And that one gets skipped over. We always go from naming to respond pretty quickly, and it takes time. So just be gentle with yourself of trying not to forget that validation step, because it does take time and it takes effort to try to validate how they're feeling. But once you kind of get it down, it becomes like second nature. So I hope this is helpful. Hope everyone's staying safe. Bye. Thanks.